You know what percentage of plastic gets recycled? 5%. Those blue bins that are everywhere, they're not full of bottles, they're full of Can you blame us for being a little cynical when you find out that all that plastic that we've been painstakingly separating out for the last 20 years all goes to the same place anyway? So yes, it's fun to laugh at powerful people.
If you've ever tossed a bottle into one of those blue recycling bins and felt even a tiny spark of pride, get ready, because the truth behind those bins is enough to make anyone throw up their hands. For decades, we've been told that recycling plastic is a sacred civic duty. Separate it, rinse it, sort it, almost worship it. But here's the kicker. Only about 5% of plastic actually gets recycled. That's the same kind of score you'd give a restaurant that serves cold soup with attitude. The rest? It ends up in the same place as the regular trash. Can you blame people for tuning out? Bill Maher taps into that frustration perfectly. He's done the Prius thing, the Tesla thing, the I'm trying to save the planet thing, and he's discovering what most of us eventually figure out. The people running the environmental crusade often aren't as committed as they want you to be. They talk like heroes but act like tourists. It's performance environmentalism, and Maher isn't afraid to call it out.
That's how I can afford to fly private. We may not be able to do much about the weather, but we do need a better plan for putting out a burning city than waiting for rain. America is so partisan now that even when there's a disaster of any kind, so many people choose to defend their own team, even over death. A lot of Democrats in this one-party state this week went right to, don't blame politicians, you can't do anything about the wind. Which is exactly half true. The wind part. Yes, fire is a tough fight out here, and yes, global warming absolutely makes it worse. But that's largely out of our control. What are we going to do? Pass a ballot measure to make sure Chinese stop burning coal?
He jokes that mocking the powerful is how he can afford to fly private, but behind the humor is a serious point. The loudest voices lecturing on carbon footprints often leave crater-sized ones themselves. They give TED Talks about sustainability while stepping off private jets clutching champagne. That's not leadership, it's branding. And that's the real question. How much of modern climate action is just PR? Think about it. The glossy campaigns, dramatic speeches, hashtags, guilt trips, and symbolic legislation that changes next to nothing. We're drowning in optics and starving for results. Climate conferences have cost millions, brought together thousands of leaders, catered mountains of food, flown fleets of private planes, all to produce promises that melt faster than the ice caps they're meant to protect. Meanwhile, the oceans choke, the air gets dirtier, and temperatures keep climbing like horror movie jump scares. Maher himself bought a first-generation Prius in 2001 and later an early Tesla. Both cars were tiny, awkward, and far from luxurious, but he did it anyway, hoping his platform would inspire others. Spoiler alert, it didn't. In 2021, around 80% of new vehicles weren't electric, hybrid, or fuel efficient. They were SUVs and trucks. That's what people want, no matter how many sad polar bear commercials are shown.
I tried to do my part for the environment. I never had kids. The one thing worse for the planet than private jets. It's true, because they may have kids. I had the first generation Prius in 2001. It looked like a Tylenol gel cap. I was always handing my keys to valets who were driving a better car than me. I had the first Tesla in 2010, and honestly, both these cars sucked. The Tesla came up to about here on me. If I had a I couldn't fit in this thing.
And honestly, that sums up the problem in one sentence. We're building policies around how we wish people behaved, not how they actually do. Take coal, for example. In 1973, coal accounted for 38% of global electricity. Decades of activism, laws, pressure, and speeches later, what was the number in 2019? 37.
Exposed power lines keep causing fires and keep not getting buried underground because it's expensive. I've heard people say, do you want to pay more taxes to fund this? No, I want you to use the exorbitant taxes you already collect to prioritize it. The power lines that cut through Topanga weren't upgraded because it endangered an herb, the milk vetch, which sounds like something they serve at Passover.
1%, 1 percentage point in nearly half a century. That's not progress. It's basically standing still while patting yourself on the back for jogging. Maher hits another nerve. We're recycling narratives, not solutions. We've been guilt-tripped into thinking that snapping the cap back on a plastic bottle and tossing it in the right bin will save the planet. Meanwhile, the bin is little more than a pit stop on the way to the same landfill as everything else. It's a feel-good illusion, a ritual we're trained to take seriously, even though it achieves next to nothing. And once people realize they've been duped into thinking their tiny sacrifices matter while major polluters carry on, they check out. They stop caring. That's the danger behind all this environmental theater.
But both times I said to myself, okay, I'll take one for the team because I have a platform, so I'll do the right thing, and then everybody will follow. People will... Nobody followed. In 2021, 80% of new vehicles weren't electric, weren't even hybrid. They weren't even cars. They were SUVs and trucks. That's what people want.
So Maher asked the real question. If we're serious about fixing the environment, where's the serious action? He brings up nuclear energy, which, whether you love it or hate it, actually moves the needle. He talks about investing heavily in research and development. But even that has its own problem. There's already endless research, endless studies, endless committees, endless meetings. Meanwhile, real-world change barely budges. It starts to look like the research isn't meant to solve anything. It's meant to delay action, create the appearance of busyness, and dodge accountability. It's easier to release a new report than to pass a law people actually have to live by. It's easier to blame Taylor Swift's plane than to overhaul a broken energy grid. And honestly, nobody wants to sit next to an angry Taylor Swift on Southwest anyway.
In 1973, the share of global electricity generated by coal was 38%. You know what it was 46 years later in 2019 after all the talk and all the trying? 37%.
If it weren't for the second half of Maher's point, environmental incompetence might feel theoretical, but it stops being abstract the moment something burns, floods, or collapses. Take wildfires, for example. California is practically famous for two things: gorgeous weather and everything being on fire. And every year, we act like these fires are some shocking new development. Wow, the state is burning again, how unexpected. Meanwhile, the rest of us are screaming, unbelievable. And this is where the political theater turns deadly.
Of plastic gets recycled? 5%. Those blue bins that are everywhere, they're not full of bottles, they're full of... Can you blame us for being a little cynical when you find out that all that plastic that we've been painstakingly separating out for the last 20 years all goes to the same place anyway? So yes, it's fun to laugh at powerful people. That's how I can afford to fly private.
Maher highlights absurd emergency management failures. Hydrants running dry, reservoirs offline during peak fire season, fire engines sitting idle because they were never repaired. One of the richest states in America has entire communities relying on systems held together with duct tape and wishful thinking. When asked why hydrants and infrastructure failed in places like Pacific Palisades, the governor basically shrugged. The local folks are trying to figure it out. A city is burning, and that's the official answer. Critics argue that priorities can sometimes seem misaligned during crises, but
Mayor said about cuts to the fire department's budget, there were no reductions that were made that would have impacted the situation. The fire chief here had a slightly different take. She said, "We are screaming to be properly funded. And yes, the budget was cut, and it did impact our ability to provide service. And by the looks of all the fire engines in the boneyard out of service because we didn't fix them, she's right."
Blaming wind or rainfall doesn't cut it. California has had winds forever. The problem isn't nature, it's preparedness. Taxpayers pay some of the highest rates in the country, yet when disaster strikes, the response is often slow, underfunded, or bogged down in bureaucracy. The fire chief openly admitted the department had been underfunded, while political leaders insisted everything was fine.
We need to get serious. Really. More nuclear? Moving way more money into research and development? I don't know, but something serious. Because the real technological problem is the way people are wired. I know it's easier just to blame Taylor Swift's plane, but honestly, do you want to be stuck on Southwest with a pissed off Taylor Swift?
Until it wasn't. Then there are recurring infrastructure disasters like exposed power lines that spark fires year after year. These lines could have been buried underground, but upgrades were skipped, either because they were too expensive or because protecting a rare plant was considered more important. Nature protection is essential, of course, but ignoring basic safety while entire communities burn? That's not environmentalism, that's negligence. And that's Maher's bigger point. Environmental failure isn't just about melting ice caps, it's about real people losing homes, cities going dark, air turning toxic, firefighters running out of water, and entire neighborhoods becoming cautionary tales.
May not be able to do much about the weather, but we do need a better plan for putting out a burning city than waiting for rain. America is so partisan now that even when there's a disaster of any kind, so many people choose to defend their own team, even over death. A lot of Democrats in this one-party state this week went right to, don't blame politicians, you can't do anything about the wind. Which is exactly half true. The wind part. Yes, fire is a tough fight out here, and yes, global warming absolutely makes it worse. But that's largely out of our control. What are we going to do, pass a ballot measure to make sure Chinese stop burning coal?
It's about leadership asleep at the wheel while pretending they're racing in a climate marathon. People aren't angry because nature is harsh. They're angry because leadership acts shocked when predictable disasters happen. It all comes full circle. The big speeches, the dramatic warnings, the guilt heaped on ordinary people while the biggest polluters and decision makers dodge responsibility. Leaders tell us to recycle while flying private. They cut fire department budgets while raising taxes. They preach sacrifice while living like royalty. At some point, people stop believing the message, not because they don't care about the planet, but because it feels fake, hypocritical, and hollow. And that's why Maher's commentary hits so hard. It's not polished, it's not diplomatic, it's raw frustration from someone who actually tried to do the right thing and realized that the people making the rules are often the least committed to following them.
Axios ran a story on how getting the water out of the hydrants in Pacific Palisades was more complicated than it seems. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it's very complicated. That's why I pay 13% of my income in the state every year to people who I assumed were working on things like this. When asked why so many of the hydrants in the Palisades ran out of water, Governor Newsom said the local folks are trying to figure that out. Yeah, you got to do that before the fire.
If leaders want the public to take climate change seriously, they need to take responsibility seriously. Start fixing the systems that fail every time disaster strikes. Start budgeting with survival in mind. Prioritize safety over optics. Be what you pretend to be. Until then, people will keep sorting plastic that never gets recycled, watching forests burn that never should have, and listening to politicians deliver speeches that never turn into action. Maher's goal is to wake people up. We don't need more slogans. We need competence.
At least in the Palisades, the hydrants were still there. 300 other ones around the city are just gone, stolen for parts. One of the 3 reservoirs for the Palisades was offline at the one time of year when it was most needed. LA's Mayor Karen Bass, the Nero of American politics, was fiddling in Ghana while the city burned and later placed the blame on 8 months of negligible rain and winds that have not been seen in LA in at least 14 years. Yeah, that's not that long a time. Maybe look in the history books to see how our ancestors handled it back in 2011.
Less branding, more building. Less guilt tripping, more problem solving. Less theater, more truth. If you're still with me, hit that like button. Seriously, it helps the channel more than you think. For more breakdowns like this, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. And tell me in the comments, do you think the people in charge are actually trying to fix this or just pretending? Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.